Okay, hello. We are ready to begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion that we accept the minutes of the previously held meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. We have two items, I do believe, Mr. Antonucci, they're up for public hearing this afternoon. Two items, and the procedures are just this, in that we will ask first that anyone that is here that wishes to testify before the committee be sworn in by a representative of our law department at this time. So,
if you plan to testify today at the public hearings, please stand, raise your right hand, and answer in the affirmative. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative from our law department. Okay, so the procedures is that we will ask those that wish to speak in favor of the conditional use request to speak first after we open the public hearing, and then we'll ask those that wish to speak against the conditional use request, and after that time, committee members will be permitted to ask questions or make comments, and then after that, the council representatives who may not be on the committee can ask questions or comments. This evening, we will, in essence, repeat that same procedure in terms of conducting a public hearing at 7 o'clock, of which you are invited back if you wish. And after that public hearing, the committee then will make a recommendation to all of council, either to pass or to deny or to table the issue, take time. So those are the procedures for the conditional use request. And we'll now move on to a description of the first conditional use request, which is going to be provided by a certain Mr. Antonucci. And the first item that is up for public hearing today is authorizing a conditional use to establish a child daycare business center at 515 Merriman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Lillian Mitchell is requesting permission to establish a child daycare at this location. Proposed daycare would occupy the basement area of the 2,736 square foot home. Care for a maximum of 12 children at a time would be provided by the petitioner and 2 part-time assistants. The basement area contains separate areas for the care of infants, toddlers, preschool, and school-aged children. Child care services will be available Monday through Friday from 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Every other weekend, they will provide overnight services during the hours of 11:30 to 5 p.m. No changes are proposed for the interior or the exterior of the house. The backyard play area contains fencing on 3 sides. Conditional use is required for 10 or more children. Current state of Ohio child care rules stipulate that any approved provider with 7 to 12 children is now considered to be a type A home. Petitioner wishes to operate to the maximum allowance provided by her state license for 12 children. Petitioner has operated Aunt D. Bunny's child care for 2 years. The licensed type B family child care home is in good standing with the state. Children are dropped off and picked up at various times of the day. The petitioner has stated the clients will turn around at the rear of the drive so they can exit forward out onto Merriman Road. The traffic engineer has no objections to the ingress and egress of the location. Providing care for up to an additional 6 children would not significantly raise the level of activity on this property nor have a detrimental effect on nearby homes. Providing quality daycare services is beneficial to the entire city, and the planning staff supports this request, and both Planning Commission and planning staff recommend approval subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this time, we'll open up the public hearing, and if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on 515 Merriman Road, please come forward, and if you could please supply for us your name and address. Give you a few minutes here to speak on the issue.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Mitchell. Reside at 515 Merriman Road, Akron, Ohio. I am co-owner of Auntie Bunny's Child Care. In the 2 years that we've serviced the community of Akron, my wife's business has been nothing but outstanding. The support and the letters that we've gotten from the community in our neighborhood shows that we are outstanding people, we are outstanding business people, and the service that we provide is something that is needed for our children. Early childhood education has now been proven to be the key to successful education, grades K through 12. We provide a safe learning environment for our children at Auntie Bunny's Child Care. Our kids come in excited and they leave more excited. With this proposal, we would like to add the addition of 6 other kids to our daycare. This allows us to not only provide additional slots for services for families who need child daycare, but it also will provide an additional opportunity for possible walk-ins, as we just were contacted by a family in our community who needs a daughter service on a walk-in basis because her schedule is flexible. Allowing us to go to 12 will enable us to do that just for that lady as well as other community members.
Okay.
We propose that allowing us to go to 12 will allow us to better serve and service our community, better serve and service our parents in need, and additionally give our kids an opportunity and a chance to experience quality daycare. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, you all. Every day, not sometimes, but every day, I have to turn families away for childcare because we are only allowed to have 6 children at one time with the Type B license. The reason why that I filed the petition is because I have a family of 5 waiting to come on board for childcare in the evening. This family has been waiting for at least 3 months, and she's continuing to wait until we are able to service other children. The children in our daycare and our parents, they are also looking forward to this petition being granted because there's other children that they have when summer comes who are going to need child care when school is out. So it's extremely vital and extremely important that we receive the additional 6 children because the need is there. And I'm not sure if you all are familiar with what's going on with daycare right now in the state of Ohio. We are mandated to take Step Up to Quality courses, and we have to be certified in these courses by 2020. There are many, many daycares that are going to shut down because of this mandate. There are a lot of women who have been doing this for years who will no longer be able to do it because they don't understand technology. We have a new system that is called a TAP system, and with this system, it's a tablet. The parents will come in and tap their children into the system. A lot of grandmoms, a lot of older folks like this, they are not willing or ready to switch over to such a dramatic change, and it is quite different. With the newer parents coming aboard, younger parents, they're familiar with the system, but the older parents aren't. But what I'm trying to say to you all is by 2020, there's going to be almost a 50% drop in home child care because of the mandated standards. We also have to receive our CDAs by 2025. So there's a lot of professional development education that we all have to go through that I am willing to do, but there are a lot of members out here who are doing child care now who aren't willing to do that. So the increase for home child care, women like myself who have 6, you're going to see a lot more girls coming forward requesting for conditional use of their homes to get those 6 more children because the need is there. It's vital. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on Merriman Road? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone? Very good. Is there anyone here wishing to speak against the conditional use request? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone? We'll now close the public hearing, and we will ask any committee members should they have any questions. Ms. Amobian.
Are you moving your facility or are you just adding to your facility?
No, ma'am, we are not moving our facility at all. As a matter of fact, our facility presently at 2,700 square feet is more than adequate to occupy and hold 12 kids per shift. The move from Hollywood to Merriman was, in effect, the reason why we decided to move. We felt like on Hollywood Avenue that we would not be able to accompany 12 kids in our home. So we moved to Merriman Avenue with this vision in mind that we would one day have 12 kids in our home.
Well, the question I'm asking has nothing really to do with what you just said, and
Okay.
I thank you for that information. I have requested, and I'm continuing to request, that we change our policy here at the city level, because this is ridiculous to ask people to continually come down and request conditional use when we know that the state law supersedes the city law. And if we change our policy, then people would have to go through this unnecessary step of requesting conditional use. That's number one. Number two, Mrs. Mitchell, thank you for that additional information about the increase in education and requirements, because it sounds like we are probably about to have a crisis on our hands if we don't try to figure out who is in the city that's operating these daycare programs and who may need some assistance as opposed to may not want to do it. They may need some assistance in getting ready for these changes, because I think you know as well as I do that when we go to this technology, everybody's not technology savvy, and some people are just frightened by hitting a button or two. So I think it would behoove us as a council to look at the list of folks that are on the list. I'm sure there's a list that we can go to on the state website and see who's licensed as a daycare provider in the city of Akron, and find out how prepared these folks are for these changes that are coming. Because if we don't do something, it sounds like we're going to be without child care providers in our city. And again, I really think it is time for us to stop having people come down for this unnecessary step. Because if they choose to operate their facilities with 12 children as opposed to 6, they're not in violation of the law, they're in violation of our regulations, which if they did that, there's nothing really we can do. I mean, we can choose to make them go through this unnecessary step, but we can't do anything because the state law supersedes our regulation, and I think we all know that. So I think it's about time that we change our ordinance to reflect what the state is already doing, please. You know, this step is ridiculous, and I think most of these providers are women, and we don't want to look like we're discriminating against women, okay, in this city. So please, will we act on this and stop having people come down here for this unnecessary, perfunctory step? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mobian. Mr. Swirsky.
Yes, could you describe for us a little bit about your own background, Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, your experiences in education? And let me clarify one thing. You actually have been operating from that site for over a year? Yes. So you did move at one point from Hollywood to there to get a bigger building.
Correct.
But you still have been operating for over a year at that site already.
Correct.
Even though a lot of people have never even noticed
Correct.
you. Okay.
You are correct.
Yeah.
In regards to my experience, I have a business administration communications degree from the University of Akron. I have been operating, my daycare 2 years from another home and a year in this home. We're going on our third year, actually, at the end of this month for Auntie Bunny's Child Care. I have worked in public service with the government. I worked for Kristen Scalise as well as Judge Stormer as a judicial assistant, and I worked in the real estate division. But prior to that, I was an educator at Arlington Christian Academy, and I taught grades 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And I did that for a few years while my children were also in elementary school, so I could be close and nearby with them. but I am also the auntie in the family who has helped raise all of my nieces and nephews. Everyone knows that I am going to take excellent care of their children. So I decided to make a career out of providing for children, because this is where I love and what I want to do until it is time for us to retire.
You have a son that graduated from Firestone
Yes, I
High School
have.
and the University of Akron?
Yes, we have 2 children.
Okay.
Yes, and my eldest, he graduated with a communications degree from Cleveland
Okay.
at a communications school. I can't remember the name of it, but my youngest son graduated from the University of Akron with a political science degree.
Okay.
Eric Mitchell,
Are you done?
a high school graduate of Akron Garfield.
Okay. Are you done after that?
Went to Glenville State College in Central West Virginia, where I graduated with a degree in education. Since 1990, I have been in public education in several school districts, vastly approaching 30 years of education, teaching kids grades K through 12. Fortunately for me, I was able to come back to Akron 3 years ago, and I am now presently holding the position as behavioral crisis coach at Litchfield COC, where I encounter children grades 6, 7, and 8. In my spare time, I like to coach, and I am also the head football coach at Akron Firestone High School. I am also the head track coach at Akron Firestone High School, and I am the 9th grade basketball coach at Akron Firestone High School.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Swirsky?
Yeah, just, when I got this proposal, being the ward councilman, I made a little bit of an extra effort to see how your neighbors feel about your facility since it has been operating for over a year there, and I got excellent response talking to neighbors on either side of the facility and to some of the neighbors across the street. And just want to add to the record that they all wrote emails or letters supporting you and said that they had not seen any problems caused by your facility being there, and that in fact they had witnessed you working with the children in the backyard, which backs up to King School, and that they were very impressed with your ability to work with children and your commitment and the quality of the customers that have been coming and using your service. They also have been very polite, very courteous, and very cognizant that they're in a residential area, and I really appreciate that. So I'm going to support this. I'm going to support the Planning Department's recommendation, the Planning Commission's recommendation, and I want to thank you for addressing a need that maybe others will talk about. We just have a tremendous need in our community for increasing daycare options for people. This location near a school will give parents, hardworking parents who drop off a kid at King, they can come right close to you, and I'm looking forward to more people from the neighborhood finding your facility something that they can use. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kamer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak in regards to what my one colleague said about not having these daycares and these uses come to City Council planning meeting for public hearings. And as a ward council person, I believe these are very important to come before us. I get to listen to the individuals and learn more about their background, and obviously it gives us the opportunity to see what's going on in our neighborhood. So I just wanted to voice my opposition in regards to what my colleague spoke about earlier. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Simonian?
With regard to Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, I happen to know them both. I've known Mr. Mitchell has been in education for a number of years. My sister was one of his educators. I know his family. I know all about that. One of the things we need to recognize, folks, is that before people get licensed to operate these facilities or any residential facility, it is the state's responsibility to do the background check, to do all of the necessary logistical matters to ensure that these people are operating the way they should. If there are complaints leveled against them, it is also the state's responsibility, again, to investigate those. So keep in mind that when we hear these conditional zoning requests, we're only hearing the part where people are asking to increase the numbers of children. We're not doing anything else in terms of a background check or anything of that nature. That is a state responsibility. The problem that I have, and I continue to have this, is that people should not have to come down here to get conditional use zoning for additional children when the state has already given that provision to them, and the state is responsible for doing all of the regulations of overseeing the quality of these homes. If people have concerns, they can always, whether we give them conditional use zoning or not, they can always report those concerns to us and to the state. So this is a perfunctory matter that we're going through that is totally unnecessary and should be eliminated, because I think it's discriminatory against women primarily, because most of these facilities are run by women, and we're taking these people through an unnecessary step that they do not have to go through. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Kamer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like I said, as a ward council person, if you're increasing the numbers that are going to be at the daycare facility, I think it's important for us to look at this. You have more vehicles coming into the neighborhood to pick up and drop off children, the potential of speeding vehicles. So this is a very important matter as a ward council person. I believe we should be part of this process. So those are my opinions, and I don't think it's really a big problem with individuals coming down here. I'd love to hear from them. I just learned a little more about you two folks and your background, so I respect that. I just don't think, eliminating the process, and in regards to, I would love for a resident to call me and answer the phone and say, I can't do anything for you, call the state. I don't think that's going to go over well. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Short of any further questions or comments, just to make a quick comment in terms of it, not necessarily the zoning, but the discussion referenced the requiring people to come in. As a former ward council representative, I understand and certainly sympathize with a ward council representative's ability to be able to know exactly what's going on in the community, as well as have a say-so in terms of the volume, if you will, of how many perhaps children in a situation, the size of a building, the zoning itself, and also being able to check off on the fact that is the traffic adequate? Is there an ability there to be able to handle the traffic situation? Is the zoning, is the surrounding zoning conducive versus leaving it up to the state? I don't think we want to abdicate our ability to have a say-so in terms of what goes on in our neighborhoods. Although I do sympathize and I do appreciate very much your comments in terms of this newer technology that's going to be coming in. And I think that's something, whereas we should perhaps take a deep dive and take a look at that and see if perhaps there's something that we can do as a city to assist with regards to that. However, though, any council member can certainly comment on the zoning and so on and so forth. I understand, and we all pretty much advocate for trying to narrow the amount of bureaucracy. However, though, I think in terms of zoning issues, we're better served to be able to have a say-so. Ms. Keith, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the Mitchells for coming down here, and I want to thank Councilman Swirsky. This particular daycare is right on the line, so it's in Mr. Swirsky's ward. However, it does abut Ward 8. And there was some hoopla. We have these social media sites, and there's a little bit of hoopla because people just really get upset about change. But then I got all these letters of recommendation of how wonderful it is to have a neighborhood setting, and you're right next to King School, which, you know, that's where my granddaughter goes. And if I had another child that was younger that wasn't going to school yet, how perfect this would be to drop the younger one off with you, and then when the older one got out of school, it goes right around the block. I also saw that some of them were concerned about the traffic, and I thought, oh my goodness, we just built an elementary school right around the corner. What is that saying, that we weren't thinking there with the elementary school? And the backgrounds that you have stimulate the fact that many of us don't fall into that category wanting our child to go to a brick and mortar school, you know? And I got to have that option. When I had my children, my husband and I, we looked at each child a little bit differently. What did they need? And that's what we provide for them. So thank you for providing a service that is a need. And the other thing, it's been touched upon a couple of times. I want you to know that United Way has 5 bold goals, which most of you know. They're going to be addressing the fact that so many, we will be losing some homes, and how we can help. They have it already in their plan of how we can help these daycare providers adjust to new regulations that are being made and educate them so that we know that early childhood education is key. We know that we've missed the mark on that enough times that we know now we have to be putting our focus on early education. And having a background in education is very helpful, but not all of our daycare people have that. However, United Way is going to stimulate that and support that with what they're giving. So as we look at what's coming to us already in this change, it's difficult for daycares to change, but I want you to know United Way is behind it. They will support it, and I think this is good to know that there's a resource here that believes in the community as you believe in your neighborhood and your community. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 2, and you're welcome to stop back this evening at 7 o'clock for the second public hearing. Thank you. The second item is the ordinance amending, supplementing Title 15, Chapter 153 Zoning Code, Section 153.2 Retail Business Districts by eliminating motor vehicle sales, Section 153 Commercial Districts by adding motor vehicle sales. So what does that mean, Mr. Antonucci?
I will explain. Okay, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Currently, Akron permits motor vehicle sales within retail business use districts, which is U3 with an A3, A4, A5 classification. Motor vehicle sales are also permitted within commercial U4 districts. Planning staff is of the opinion that motor vehicle sales lots should be reclassified as a commercial use, U4 only, and thus any future motor vehicle sales lots be prohibited within a retail business use area classification. Over the past several years, there have been an oversaturation of motor vehicle sales lots, mainly on retail zone lots throughout Akron. According to data from the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles, there are 118 licenses for used motor vehicle dealers and only 16 licenses for new motor vehicle sales in Akron. The majority of motor vehicle sales lots are located along main arterial roads. One particularly hard-hit area has been the Arlington Street corridor, where there are 20 licensed used motor vehicle dealers. Often vacant retail properties such as former restaurants and stores are turned into motor vehicle sales lots. Most of these lots create visual blight because they're characterized by unpaved parking areas, little or no landscaping, illegal signage, and overcrowding. Furthermore, motor vehicle sales lots are more commercial in nature because of the allowance of minor repairs to the for-sale vehicles and storage of vehicles on the lot. The overabundance of improperly developed used motor vehicle sales lots creates pockets of visual blight throughout the city. Planning staff's of the opinion that there's an abundance of commercially zoned property that is more suitable for new or used motor vehicle sales lots. Both Planning Commission and planning staff recommend approval.
Thanks, Mr. Antonucci. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request to restrict the amount of vehicle sales in section 153. Anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request? Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the ordinance? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone? Hearing none, we'll open it up now to questions from the committee. Ms. Amobian.
Mr. Antonucci, this, it appears that we are, is it that we are revising our policy? That's what this is,
Right,
pretty
so
much?
this is a text change to the zoning code that'll basically say that if you want to sell cars in the city, that you need to go to a U4 or commercial district, as opposed to, most of our arterials like Arlington Street, Market Street, have the retail zoning. So what we're doing is essentially taking out car sales from the retail districts and moving them to a more U4 commercial district, which is consistent with where we have auto vehicle repairs, for instance. So it seems to be, for us, it's more fitting to be in a commercial district as opposed to retail.
Help me understand this. Now, I know there's a young man, we have a request that's pending that we discussed a few weeks ago, and the one on Vernon Odom, that would not fit into this.
It wouldn't, no, it doesn't impact that because that's a residentially zoned property.
Okay.
That's a conditional use regardless.
Okay,
So this is just taking, so somebody couldn't come in to like a restaurant building that's closed down on Arlington Street and just sell cars off of that lot.
Oh, okay, I see.
This is making it so you have to come in, go to the commercial district, or if you want to be in a retail district, you would then need conditional use to do that.
Okay. Let me just follow up. The intersection that the lady referenced, Cuyahoga Street and Talmadge, where that corner is across the street from that service station, and there are vehicles, I don't know if they're being sold there or stored there or what would that be called? Is that residential that was
I think that is a
conditional?
retail, I believe that is a retail district there, but that would be essentially grandfathered in. I mean, we could look at that with respect to things like signage that's too much, or,
Okay.
where cars are parked if they're over, too close to the sidewalk and things like that. But I believe that's a retail district. But the ones that are already there, legitimately already there,
Okay.
and comply with everything else, would be grandfathered in.
But if they ever left, this would resort to,
That's right. Once
Okay.
they leave, then the actual zoning would kick in. And it creates a situation so he won't necessarily get more,
okay, thank you.
Mr. Kamer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to applaud your efforts and the planning departments. As a ward council person that gets phone calls in regards to these little lots that pop up in the retail areas, I appreciate that and I support this. I'm glad you folks are moving forward with this. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Okey dokey, nobody? We'll now move on to the new list of legislation. We'll take time on the balance of the regular list of legislation. And the first item is we'll refer to it as 3, which is approving the historic designation of 105 Fir Hill as a historic landmark.
So we'd refer and advertise this for a public hearing for next week.
Okay. Very good. We'll refer that item. Number 4 is authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into AA contract or contracts with the County of Summit in order to purchase the county's property located at 220 South Balch Street. Interesting legislation, Mr. Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and members of the Planning Committee. Several months ago, the Summit County Executive's Office reached out to the mayor's office and said that they no longer have a need for their space on the first level. I mean, we have the basement level is the City Center Athletic Club. The first floor is space shared with the City of Akron Recreation Bureau, with the gymnasium and the theater, and Summit County had several office spaces. And then, of course, the second floor is where we have our recreation administration offices. So this ordinance would authorize the city of Akron to purchase the Summit County space for $1.
I was going to ask about the sale price, if that's negotiable or not. Of course, joking. The question for you, though, is, and I believe, if I recall correctly, condo agreement that we had with them previously, and are we just going to, how is that going to be handled? The title, I guess, is what my question.
Originally, the original legislation with the city and the county purchasing it, it used to be the Jewish Community Center back in the day.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I forget what the athletic club was called over there. But that was 1992, and then 2004 or 5, this council approved legislation to authorize the city of Akron taking over the theater space from Summit County. So yeah, it's always been a condominium type agreement with the city and the county.
Okay. Now, how is the roof? I think a couple years ago, we approved some funding for it. The roof is in pretty good condition at this time, or where is it at?
The Bald Street Athletic
Yeah.
Facility, it's in excellent condition.
I thought
3 or 4 years ago, we replaced the roof.
Good.
Of course, with the I Promise School and the LeBron James Family Foundation, we made major upgrades to the gymnasium, and I would suggest that all council go and take a look at it. The
beautiful.
gym is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So we've been doing quite a bit of
Good.
work in that facility as far as painting and things like that.
Yeah,
So-
no, it's, when we first entered into the agreement with the county to purchase, it was, needed a lot of work, and I'm glad that the roof especially was something of concern. So I'm glad we're moving in this direction, and I think this is a good piece of legislation. Questions or comments from anyone? Ms. Amobian?
You know, I've been in that building a number of times. I've never been to the theater. Is it operational?
Oh, yes, it is, yes.
They actually show movies there?
Now, the theater, we have the New World Performance Lab, utilizes the theater. They have their, theater and their, production programs and things like that, and they do have
Do they have a movie?
events and...
Do they have a movie screen? Is
No,
this-
no,
or
no,
is it stage?
it's an auditorium or type
Okay.
theater.
Okay, I see. What about the swimming pool? Are we doing upgrades, or has it been upgraded?
The swimming pool is on the lower level, and yes, we made major upgrades to that swimming pool just a little over a year ago.
And it's being utilized?
Big time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Further questions or comments? I'd like to know, again, I think this is a good thing for the community over there. Is there a recommendation for
Consent agenda, because county council
suspension.
at the committee introduced this last week, and they're going to approve theirs this evening. So
Okay,
consent
so
would
you
be
want
perfect.
consent? Very good. Is there a
Motion for
recommend-
consent?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Number 5 is authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a lease agreement with Cargill Salt Incorporated. This is nothing new. Mr.
Yes,
Antonucci.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this renews, Cargill Salt was on a 50-year lease. They need to renew that. It's up, so they want to renew that for another 50 years. And this is the Tree Farm property down off Manchester Road by the canal that comes through. They have several wells on that location, and they want to just renew that lease to be able to drill. Just reminding you also that as they do, when wells do come in to be drilled, they need conditional use
Yes.
on those locations.
Absolutely.
So this just renews their lease.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is there questions or comments from anyone? Is consent okay on this one?
That'll be fine.
Motion for consent?
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Ayes have it. Anything else come before the committee? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thanks.